Have you ever wondered if there's more to you than meets the eye? I sure did. And trust me, I've had a lot of time to wonder, especially during class. I mean, who really needs to know about the Pythagorean theorem when there's a whole world out there waiting to be explored? But for me, it wasn't just about boredom. It was like there were 100 different worlds inside my head, all fighting for my attention at the same time. I was 14 when I found out I was different. Not in the, different and unique just like everyone else way, but in the, whoa, what's happening to my brain kind of way. It started on a Tuesday morning, the kind that's just gloomy enough to make you want to crawl back under the covers and pretend it's Saturday. I was in math class, trying and failing to pay attention to Mrs. Thompson's lecture on quadratic equations. My foot was tapping to a beat only I could hear, my fingers drumming against the desk. My eyes darted to the clock, only 5 minutes had passed. Great. But then something weird happened. Mrs. Thompson scribbled a complicated equation on the board, her voice a distant hum in my ears. I blinked, and suddenly, everything around me seemed to fade away. The numbers and symbols on the board snapped into focus, almost glowing. My heartbeat slowed, my breath steadied, and it was like I could see through the equation like it was a puzzle I was meant to solve. My hand shot up. Yes, Sam. Mrs. Thompson sounded surprised, probably because I wasn't exactly the most engaged student in her class. The answer is 42, I blurted out. And if you rearrange the equation like this, I jumped up and grabbed a marker from her hand, my body moving like it was on autopilot. I began writing furiously, showing a step-by-step solution that took the entire board. I felt like I was painting, every number and symbol flowing perfectly, every stroke fitting into place. When I finished, I turned around. The whole class was staring at me, mouths open. Mrs. Thompson's eyebrows were so high, they might have merged with her hairline. That's correct, she said slowly, like she was trying to figure me out. How did you? I blinked. How did I know? I had no idea. Just moments ago, I didn't even remember what an equation was, let alone solve one. But in that instant, it had been like the answer had always been there, just waiting for me to uncover it. From that moment on, everything started to change. It happened again in chemistry, then in history. Whenever I focused hard enough, when I truly locked in on something, time slowed down, and my brain seemed to light up like a switchboard, every detail and connection becoming crystal clear. But there was a catch. Oh boy, was there ever a catch. For every moment of perfect clarity, there were a dozen more where my mind was like a broken TV, flickering from channel to channel with no remote control in sight. One second, I'd be solving a physics problem. The next, I'd be daydreaming about dinosaurs fighting robots. I was ping-ponging through thoughts so fast it felt like my brain might explode. I'd lose track of conversations mid-sentence, forget why I'd walked into a room, or start projects I'd never finish. My friends were worried, my parents were baffled, and me? I was just trying to keep up. Then I started noticing things. Patterns. Strange things happening in our town. The electrical grid kept malfunctioning, traffic lights blinked in odd sequences, and there were whispers of something lurking in the shadows of the old abandoned factory by the river. No one seemed to notice, or if they did, they shrugged it off as bad luck or coincidence. But my brain wouldn't let it go. I knew something was up. One afternoon, I was sitting alone in the library, flipping through books without really reading them, when I saw it again: the numbers. Patterns in the dates of the outages, the locations. My mind snapped into that hyper-focused mode, and I grabbed a notepad, scribbling furiously. It all pointed to the factory. That's when I met Zoe. She was a transfer student, quiet but sharp-eyed, with a backpack covered in pins and patches from places I'd never even heard of. She sat across from me, her head tilted, watching me with a curious smile. "You're not just doodling, are you?" she asked, nodding at my notebook. I looked up, startled. "What makes you think that?" "Because you've been muttering the same numbers over and over," she replied, amused. "What's going on?" I hesitated, but something about her made me feel like I could trust her. So, I told her everything. About my ADHD, my hyper-focus moments, the weird equations, and the strange patterns. Zoe listened carefully, her eyes widening. "That's not ADHD," she finally said. "That's a superpower." I laughed, but she didn't. "I'm serious," she insisted. "My dad's a scientist. I've seen his notes on people who can process information at superhuman speeds. It's rare, but it's real. And I think you're one of them." It sounded crazy, but I had to admit, it made a weird kind of sense. If my brain was wired differently, maybe that was why I could solve puzzles no one else could. Zoe leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "And I think whatever's happening at the factory is connected to you. You're seeing something no one else can. We need to check it out." I wasn't sure if I was ready for this. I was just a teenager with a brain that worked like a jumbled up Rubik's Cube. But there was something in Zoe's eyes that made me believe. Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't alone in this. That night, we snuck out and made our way to the factory. The place was dark and cold, with broken windows and rusted metal doors. Zoe and I crept inside, our footsteps echoing off the concrete floors. And that's when we saw it, a massive machine in the center of the room, humming with energy, its lights blinking in the same strange sequence as the town's electrical grid. A shadowy figure stood by the controls, muttering to themselves, typing commands into a terminal. I felt my mind slipping into that hyper-focused state again, every detail of the machine becoming clear in my mind. I could see how the circuits connected, how the power flowed. I knew somehow that this machine was the source of all the strange happenings. And it wasn't just some random malfunction. It was a countdown. Zoe nudged me. "What do we do?" I swallowed hard. I think I can stop it. But I need to focus. I need you to keep that guy busy." She nodded, and with a grin that was part excitement, part fear, she charged at the figure, shouting and waving her arms. Meanwhile, I darted to the terminal, my fingers flying over the keys, the world narrowing down to just me and the machine. I had seconds to decode the commands, reroute the power, and shut down whatever it was counting down to. My heart pounded in my chest, but my mind was clear, sharp. I could do this. I had to do this. Suddenly, there was a blinding flash, and the machine sputtered, whirred, and then went silent. The shadowy figure cursed and ran, but Zoe tackled them before they could get far. I breathed a sigh of relief, my heart still racing. We'd done it. We'd stopped whatever disaster was looming over our town. As I stood there, the adrenaline wearing off, I realized something. My ADHD wasn't a curse or a flaw. It was part of who I was, and it gave me the power to see things differently, to notice what others missed, and maybe, just maybe, could help me save the world one chaotic, hyper-focused moment at a time. Zoe grinned at me. "See? Told you it was a superpower." I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to embrace the wild, wonderful way my brain worked and use it to make a difference. And who knows? This was just the beginning. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share this video with your friends. Thanks for watching.